It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That, of course, is Beatallica from their latest release called ABBEY LOAD. And as much as I love this new CD and hate the actual Load record, this is redeeming for Metallica. And that's the lead-off track with Come Together. And on the phone with us, we want to welcome back the lead singer of Beatallica, our good friend Jaymz. What's going on, Jaymz?
Yes, always good to hear from you and talk with you, my man.
Well, that's good. Well, you know what, Jaymz? I'm going to be very complimentary here. I'm very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm very pleased with the success you guys have had over the last 8 years as Beatallica. And it's amazing to me that you guys never run out of ideas where the Beatallica, what do you want to call, brand is concerned. I mean, you guys are able to continue delving into that Beatles Metallica catalog and come up with something fresh and new, and Load is no exception to the rule.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think what people don't realize either is that, because Beatallica functions like any other band when they're composing tunes and getting ready to put out a record and record, let's say you take a band like, Aerosmith or whatever, they put out a 14-song album, 15-song album. Well, people have to realize that they probably have like 30, 35 songs that they might be considering or working on, and riffs and stuff that just never sees the light of day. Well, that's the same thing for Beatallica. I'm thinking of 7 songs right now that were considered for the album but didn't make the album for one reason or another. And there's a plenty boatload, plethora, whatever you want to call it, of songs besides that. If we had to go record an album now or say, what's the track listing going to be for the next album, we'd be over halfway done already. So,
Well, these
first things first with ABBEY LOAD,
Right. Well, these rejects that maybe didn't make the record for, like you said, for whatever reason, one way or the other, is it something that you could possibly go back and go, this didn't make the record because of we didn't feel it was good enough or the idea wasn't strong enough, but if we rewrite it, maybe we can save it in the archives for the next one?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple reasons why songs didn't make ABBEY LOAD. One would be the overall cohesiveness and flow of the album, because you're right. Yeah, maybe like some songs were sounding a little clunky. It's worth it to sit on that for a while, hone the craft. You have time. It's okay. I was just talking to a guy before, and I'm a big Kiss fan. And on the Paul Stanley solo album, 77, I believe Hide Your Heart, a song by Kiss, was supposed to have been on that album. Well, that song didn't see the light of day until 10 years after the Paul Stanley solo album actually came out.
Right.
But, they work on it, they wait, when is the right time, So there's that example. Another example would be some songs just don't get permitted, We had songs that we had recorded and ready to go for ABBEY LOAD, and then licensors changed their minds and they told us that we couldn't put it on the record. So there's those songs that weren't even rejects. They had made the record. You know what I mean? But halfway through the process, they got yanked. So that's part of the life of Beatallica, dealing with those pitfalls all the time. So.
Right. Well, take us through that a little bit. I don't think we really discussed that a whole lot in depth, and I'm sure this has been a real learning curve for you and the guys in the band since you became Beatallica. What do you have to go through in order to have a song available on a CD, much like this ABBEY LOAD, when it comes to publishing rights and getting authorization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot different than going through just like the Harry Fox agency. If a band wants to record a tune, name any cover, whoever that band was that did the Boys of Summer. I don't know, it's just the first one that came to my head. They have to go through the Harry Fox agency. You can get permission for it. That part of it's very easy. If you're doing it, just like that. A lot of the past Beatallica history is more than just going through Harry Fox because of the mashing up and this marriage of the two entities, of the Beatles side and the Metallica side. So anything that we do, we will present it to our label first, and they always tell us, look, you write the best stuff that you can. We'll deal with it from here. So we get them, basic demos, whether they be live or even some MIDI files and samples of lyrics and stuff, and they send those to whatever respective licensor. Those are the folks then that make the decision, is this okay? Is not okay. If one licensor owns a group of songs, the dominoes then tend to fall. If they're approving one, they're probably going to approve the other four or whatever it's going to be. But then on the flip side, if they don't approve one, it means they're not going to approve the other one. So, and that's some of the problems that we ran into with ABBEY LOAD. It's not like we weren't trying, and not like we weren't doing our due diligence. Everyone's very professional and adult about it. No one's mad. No one's no one takes it personally or anything. We always feel that licensors feel that they have a job to do, and that's what they feel is their job, the way that they handle their business. It disappoints us to some extent, sure. But on the other hand, we've had some licensors that they've been very generous, and some people that have given us permission to do some things with material that what we really think is kind of groundbreaking. We wish that every licensor would think like that and hop on the train. Beatallica is doing stuff with music and composition that a lot of bands out there not only do they don't do, they just never really thought of doing.
Right.
So we like to think it's sort of revolutionary. Why don't you come join us and be part of it?
Now, do you get an explanation as to why you may get rejected? Do they ever, expound on that, or do you just get a flat-out rejection?
Well, it's varied. I think one reaction was no. The answer is no. Don't ask us again.
Okay, but they didn't give you any kind of grounds for that, or just like, well, we don't.
They don't need to.
Well, I know they don't need to, but
Yeah.
but it would be interesting to get inside their thought process, if there is one, to go, okay, they heard our demo, or they listened to our idea, or maybe read the lyrics, and they thought, we're not going to let these guys do this because they're spoiling the integrity of the original composition, or
that could be a reason. Yeah, some things are sacred.
Sure.
There's just some things that, I have a guitar here at my house that never leaves the house. Okay, it's never going to leave the house. Never taking it out on tour. It's never going. Nope, that guitar is sacred. I already told my wife. I said, the day that I die, my uncle's going to get that guitar, okay? Because he's a player here, and he plays a lot of blues rock and all that stuff. I said, I'm going to give my uncle that guitar. And he's like, you can't give him that guitar. That's my guitar.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't even have ownership over it. It's mine. Some things are just sacred, man. So I get it. I understand it. I just wish that more people would be on board, because we're really not doing it as like some sort of slam or jab
disrespect.
Or I mean, we like to think of it as a new way of looking at musical composition,
right?
And a clever way of doing it. Not a meat-fisted way of looking at it.
Sure. Well, are you, looking back over your, 8 years, 9 years now that you've been doing this, are you surprised at the success that you've had with this, being able to actually travel the world with it and getting national or even worldwide acclaim with it? Are you still shocked or surprised, or is it old hat for you now?
Well, I think when it first started, yeah, you do, because we really didn't do anything to dredge that up. It was really a dead issue to us. But now it's like, and when you're working with labels and publicists and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, yeah, these guys are professionals. You know what I mean? This is what they do. So I'm not surprised in some respects, because I know that those guys are good at what
right.
they do. You know, that's why they're with us, and that's why we love them for it. You know,
sure.
As far as the Beatallica side, as far as the band members, because I mean we're very DIY, homegrown guys. You know what I mean? We are self-managed. We have no managers. We're our managers. You know. So I guess in some respects that says A, we're organized, B, we're driven, you know, C, we don't have bad habits that will eventually destroy us like it's done with a zillion other bands before us.
Sure.
all the other pitfalls of life, you know. I guess it just says that, you know, we have a well-rounded team. We're all adults here. You know, this band functions just like any other band that goes out and does it.
Right.
You know, because you have to. If you don't, you're going to last about, you know, 2 minutes and 57 seconds, and that's going to be the end of it.
Well, without getting into specifics here, has this career as Beatallica enriched you financially?
Well, sure.
Beyond your imagination of what it should be.
Well, I'm sitting here in my basement pub. You know, I built a pub in the basement. It's called the Crooked Shillelagh, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah, Irish pub. But you have to remember that the people in Beatallica, I suppose mostly Gerg and myself, we're constantly playing because we play in different projects.
Right.
I'm in 4 bands. One of the other bands tours regionally around the Midwest. It's a Celtic rock band. Gerg is leaving on a plane tomorrow because he's touring. He's doing Coachella Festival with the Violent Femmes. He's their road guitar player. So I mean, we get out and do all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
You know, he has a studio in town. So he's an engineer. He's a live sound engineer. He's a musician. I book and manage, you know, 4 different projects that run around and then do all that sort of thing. So if it's not Beatallica, it's something else.
Right.
Which is good. It keeps Beatallica fresh. I'll tell you that.
Well, being in Beatallica and doing your other projects has kept you from having to work in a cubicle or work in a day job, right?
Well, here's another thing that people might not realize. This is the one thing when people think about Beatallica and they think about any members of any band that they may not like or they think is like, you know, kind of got a dulled head or a dulled brain. When I am at home, I still do work as an outpatient occupational therapist for a convent here in Milwaukee. The mother house of this convent is located. Mother house of the order is located in Milwaukee.
Right.
So I was working, you know, with Sister Nyla today on transfers after her hospitalization and getting her through the steps and, you know, but this is a medical group that when I'm in town, yeah, we want you to work here. You know, I've known some of those guys for better part of 14 years or more. But they're also like, yeah, if they're like, okay, well, when are you leaving again? And I'll say, okay, well, this is when we're going and this is what we're doing. It's like, okay.
Nice. Well, you're kind of like you're kind of like David Lee Roth being a paramedic on the side.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah. Me and Dave could hang out. I'd understand the lingo. You know.
Nice.
That'd be cool.
Well, Jaymz, tell us a little bit about this new release, this ABBEY LOAD. I mean, has this taken any different approach in any way, different than your previous releases, or how is this experience different than the previous Beatallica releases?
Well, I mean, song compositionally, not really. I mean, because some of the tunes that are actually on ABBEY LOAD, we've been playing out live for a couple years now, so people will probably be familiar with them if they've seen us. So in that respect, no. I mean, when you're dealing with the medleys, in that respect, yeah, because now instead of getting a break in between each of those songs, you have the Abbey Road medley, which is 5 songs going bang, 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 and then Golden Slumbers, which is 3 more. So you really need to pay even that much more attention to how cohesively the songs fit together and go from one to the other, to the other, to the other. So when you're dealing with like tempo, certain time signatures and modalities and all sorts of other things like that. I mean, it just makes you think more, because now you have to think, okay, well, this is how it sounds on record. How is this going to sound live? Because you got to remember, but Beatallica doesn't use any samples or triggers, or it's all real.
Right,
it's all happening right in front of you. So that was the big challenge about doing the medleys. The rest of the album, honestly, pretty standard for us. I mean, it's stuff that we've been doing and kind of thinking about for a while. I know that Cliff's involvement on this album, as far as helping with song structures and just composition in general, this is his biggest influence and song inclusion on the record, which is great, because we all songwrite in our own other respective projects and things like that. So we should be sharing that duty.
Sure.
So it's good. So some songs Cliff is mainly Cliff's go at it. Some songs it's me and him together. Some songs it's mainly my go at it. But any song that comes down to the studio is definitely free reign to be scrutinized and challenged by any other member of the band. So.
Right. Well, at what point do you sit there and, think about the Beatles catalog and obviously the Metallica catalog and decide that these 2 songs should be mashed up?
Well, I'm trying to think of an example of a song that we had mashed up with something else and then we changed it. Because the general rule in the band is like once you use a song, you can't use it again.
Right.
I don't know if there's any of those on this album, but we'll go through that, because songs for us will develop either by a riff or maybe like titles or maybe like feels, a general vibe of the song. So and again, this band functions like any other working band. Joe Perry comes in with a riff. Okay, well maybe that's where a song starts. Or Steven Tyler comes in with some lyrics and he's got just a couple lines of a melody in his head, and then a riff builds around that maybe. I mean, songs develop in different ways. And that's exactly what happens with Beatallica. We'll look at things to mash up. Doesn't mean they always work.
Right.
And if they don't work, it's okay. I think you have to be smart enough. You have to be just as smart, knowing when something doesn't work the same way like when it works.
So it's a vibe. It's a feel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool.
I think ABBEY LOAD has a darker feel than the previous 2 full lengths. For some reason, I don't know why, but we started kind of thinking about that when we were really listening to the first mixes. I mean, not that we're like some doom band or anything.
Right.
Like that,
exactly.
But there's just a little bit more menacing vibe kind of bubbling under the surface on this, and I'm not entirely sure why, but we just kind of ran with it when we did some of these mixes. Then we started feeling some of that, and you start feeling that, it's like, why fight it? Go with it. If it feels natural, go with it.
Right. Well, I did notice that this new one is darker and heavier. That I did notice that it was kind of a more I don't ballsy would be the word for it.
Could be. I know that when we started laying down drums for it, Ringo and Flemball's producer, over at his place, at his studio, they both thought it was the easiest drum album that they've done for Beatallica. I would probably venture to say that Flemball thought it was the easiest album for my guitar sections out of any Beatallica album. You would think that that would make it a real happy album and very free, and
sure.
No, it was actually just the opposite. You just kind of go with it. I mean, in a lot of ways, this band has dictated us. We don't dictate the band. I've always said that the band found us.
Right.
We didn't just create Beatallica or find Beatallica. Beatallica found us.
Right.
And musical pieces, they control the musician. A musician never masters the music. A poet never truly completes a poem, in my mind. There's always something in that artist that's going to look at a finished product and say, we could have done this.
Yeah, well, that's you could say that about anything, because
sure, of course,
they always say that old saying, hindsight is 20/20, and man, I wish I had gone back and thought of this, and we all do that. I have, here's another thing, speaking of things that you don't know about Jaymz Lennfield, besides being occupational therapy guy. When I was at UW-Madison, I was a writing major, and I'm not talking like fiction. I was a poetry major at UW-Madison, and I started, working on some pieces, and got some fairly good critical acclaim up there. And there's one poem that I'm thinking of that, in my mind, is never going to be finished. I know exactly what poem it is, and I know what part of the poem it is. It's a very short. I'm talking it's 3 or 4 words and 1 piece of punctuation. And that snippet of that poem has probably changed 7 times in 20 years. Okay.
And I haven't looked at it purposely for about 5 years because I don't want to change it again.
Right.
I'm just
right.
you got to be done with this, dude. You know what I mean? And it's so simple, but yet that one little inflection, the artist thinks it makes so big of a difference. Maybe to 99% of the population it doesn't, but to that person,
right,
that looks at it or hears that something and says, "Oh yeah, I got it. I get it now. That's what should be. That's how it should be." Sure. That's what artists strive for.
Yeah. Instead of
please that minuscule.
Yeah. Well, instead of just becoming a what do you want to call a spontaneous piece, when you start overthinking it, then it becomes contrived and it ruins it.
Yeah, I think that there's some songs on Abbey Load that are pretty spontaneous, like how you say. I remember when we started first working with Help. I remember exactly where I was, what hotel room I was in, started working on it, and it was probably the quickest song on the album, to kind of get formulated. And then there's other songs that were, a little more difficult. It's just like, how's this gonna go? And then you got to know when to take some care with that. Other times, you know what? Crack open a cold one. We're slinging this one out without a ladle, and that's what's going to be it. And we're just going to have fun with it. There's nothing wrong with approaching both ways. if you know what you're doing and you know how to control it, I guess.
Right. Well, now that you've done the Beatallica thing for as long as you have, can you sit down and enjoy a Metallica album or a Beatles album, without going, you know what, been there, done that, already used that, done that. This isn't inspiring anymore. I mean, or do you listen to it and go, man, that's one of my favorite records. I love listening to that. I mean, how is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, I can say this, and this is just by pure coincidence, that my two favorite Metallica songs and my favorite Beatles song have never been used in a Beatallica song. And that's not purposeful. It's just we haven't found the right marriage for those songs. Those songs would be Metal Militia and Disposable Heroes on the Metallica side, and In My Life on the Beatles side. But we've just never found it. So I hear those songs, I'm like, this is great. It's a great song. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. I think that there's some pieces from the Beatles and Metallica that you'll like more than others. I mean, that's natural. I could say that about any of the bands that I'm in.
Right. Well, from a recording standpoint, how much material do you think that you have in you, where Beatallica is concerned? Is there a point where you run out? I mean, does it come to an end at some point? Not from a performance standpoint, but from a recording standpoint.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think it'd be silly to say no, to try and defy that. I mean, original, bands like, I'm just thinking of any band, REM, when REM decided to call it quits. I believe Michael Stipe's quote was, you got to know when it's time to leave the party.
Right.
And then they just stopped.
Sure.
That's cool. Right on. Good job.
Well, one of my favorite comedians is Doug Stanhope. I don't know if you know him or know of him.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
And he, was talking about people who make the comment about, say, artists who die, be it drug overdose or whatever, for whatever reason they passed away. Oh, he died too soon. He had so much more to give. And it's like, how do you know that? Maybe he was just out of shit.
Yeah.
Maybe he was done. Maybe that's all he had to give. How do you know he had so much more to give, be it a Jimi Hendrix or a Kurt Cobain or a Jim Morrison? He died so young. He had so much more to give. How do you know?
You could say they could have done a bunch of other stuff and it wouldn't have been any good.
Right. So he goes, well, maybe they died because they were just out of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as Beatallica, I mean, we know that it's a finite experience here. I mean, just do the math. Eventually, if you got, because there's no repeats, eventually it's a finite experience.
As far as recording is concerned.
Yeah,
because you guys could go out and perform as Beatallica forever and a day, as long as you choose to do that. But when it comes to the recording aspect, and that's why I formulated that question that way, there is going to be a time where it's just like, okay, we're done. We've run out of material.
Yeah, and I don't think that the band is going to get to the point where we'd be like, okay, we have these 12 Metallica songs and these 12 Beatles songs left, and then if we hook these up, then it creates, it's like Circle of Life, It's not like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't need to do that.
Sure.
You don't need to prove that point. The label that we have with Oleo, that they just tell us, look, make the best stuff you can. You have entire creative control. We trust you. You do what you want to do. They've never questioned any of our creativity in the band, which is really, really lucky. You know what I mean? It's rare in some cases.
Sure. Well, Jaymz, is there anything specific about this new release, ABBEY LOAD, that you want to tell the fans about that we haven't touched on specifically?
Anything else about the album? you can pre-order that on Amazon right now. That's all good stuff. Working on fledgling ideas for the next Euro tour. I know that. It's just started conversation, so we're not confirming anything about what we're going to do, but that would be the first area to hit. The only thing about the album, Ringo sings on the album for the first time.
Okay.
Ringo Lars actually has a vocal track on the album.
Right.
So good for him.
Well, speaking of vocal tracks, one of the original Beatles, John Lennon, his first son, Julian Lennon, recently celebrated his 50th birthday. Would you ever consider having a Julian Lennon as a guest vocalist on a Beatallica record if he was amenable?
Oh yeah. We've even said in the past that Beatallica material is not limited to the Beatles.
Right.
When we did an EP a couple of years ago called Winter Plunder Band. Okay, it's only available at gigs. It's not through distro. And on that album, it's a holiday album, and we did Wonderful Christmas Time. That's not a Beatles song.
Right.
We've always said if we ever wanted to do a Harrison, take a stab at a Harrison solo song or a Wings song, we've not put that limitation on ourselves. We've been on record as saying that.
Sure.
The only time that we found it that we could do that was in that Winter Plunder Band example.
Right.
Because it just lent itself perfectly. It was a holiday album, so. But yeah, any sort of inclusion about any other person like that or guest, that's like, oh yeah, that's awesome stuff,
Right, absolutely. All right, James.
You tell him that we'll go have lunch.
Excellent.
Next time you talk to him, you tell him we'll go have lunch.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, James. Well, why don't you tell people where they can find out about Beatallica on the web? I'm sure you guys have got websites and Facebooks and maybe even other type of social media that they can look you up.
Yep. Yeah, it's the Facebook.com/Beatallica. If people want to write me, you go right ahead. Jaymz.Lennfield is, you can obviously probably find me on the Beatallica site. The main website is Beatallica.org. Twitter.com/Beatallica, all that stuff. Some friends of ours, Tim Murphy and Mike Weber, they do a Beatallicast. It's a podcast, and they usually run like a monthly podcast and have different guests on. And it could be fans, it could be folks from the label, it could be members of the band, it could be other people associated, loosely with Beatallica. They're on Facebook, so that's always good stuff, and they've been uber helpful. So there's plenty of ways to find it. If you just went onto Google and you typed in Beatallica, you'd find a gajillion things about it.
Sure.
YouTubing it and whatever else, but.
All right, James. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you here on the Classic Metal Show. Congratulations on the latest Beatallica release called ABBEY LOAD. 15 songs in all, which that's a nice long CD in this day and age. I know some of the songs are only 2 minutes, 3 minutes apiece, but still, 15 songs on one CD. Can't beat that. So.
Yeah, that's what the medley does. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
Like I'm trying to think of what the shortest Beatles song is on that medley. I think Polythene Pam's got to only be like a minute and 28 seconds on the original Abbey Road album. So.
Right.
Our stuff's a little longer, but
sure. All right, well, go pick that up. As James mentioned, you can get it on Amazon, and you guys have iTunes download too when that comes out.
Oh yeah, yep, that'll all be up there too.
Good, excellent. All right, so go pick up the new Beatallica, ABBEY LOAD, and James, as a tradition, we always let our artists pick a closing song from the new release and maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Okay, let's see. Let's do... Oh, how about I saw her standing there, the version of that. One of my favorite bands ever is Merciful Fate. Okay, I'm a huge Merciful Fate fan. And this song, also known as I Saw Her Thrashing there, it was pretty much an anecdotal story of Jaymz Lennfield at a Merciful Fate show. And I was like, I don't know, like 15 or whatever. And I ended up running into this girl at the show, James's first metal chick that he saw at a gig, you know. And she was older than me. I think she was like 17 or something like that at the time. So I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome, you know. And watching the gig and stuff like that, and everything's cool, everything's great, gonna hang out. Oh, nope, James's mom comes to pick him up from the show, blows the whole thing, you know. And I'm like, Mom. It's like, man. So whenever I hear that and I think of Merciful Fate, I think of, you know, lost chances at life, you know.
Sure. Absolutely.
But, all fun stuff.
Excellent. All right, the new Beatallica is called ABBEY LOAD. Go visit Beatallica over at Beatallica.org. And here it is. It's a new one. It's called I Saw Her Standing There, exclusively here on your Classic Metal Show.